On DigitalOcean, let's go ahead and create a droplet that we can use. This will be Docker test, and let's get the cheapest one. If you've not used DigitalOcean, it's a lot of fun, and it's a cheap way to explore Docker in a destroyable way. I'm going to go to Applications, and I'm going to click on Docker. So it's basically Ubuntu, but it has Docker pre-installed. It's really easy to install Docker on Ubuntu, but anyway, that's easy enough. Add my SSH key and go. So there you go, that's creating. While that's creating, let me show you some commands. And once again, I have a link for $10 of DigitalOcean credit. That is a referral link that's down there in the description. So if you want free credit to play around, you can use that. While that's going, let me show you the Docker commands that we're going to use today. These are the basic commands. If you look at all of them, there's a lot, and it can be a little daunting, but the basic commands are pretty simple. There's Docker run, which will take any image, it will create a new container from the image, and then it will start that container, which is different from Docker start. Docker start starts an existing container that is not running right now. So when a container is run with Docker run, you can stop it, Docker stop, give it a name or an ID, and it'll stop it. And then if you want to restart that container again, Docker start will restart that container. So if you were to run Docker run 4 times, you're going to create 4 new containers from that image. Just important to know because that confuses a lot of new people. Docker PS gives you a list of all your running containers. If you do PS flag A, then it's going to include all your stopped containers, which is very useful because sometimes you want to see how many containers you've accidentally created over time. And then Docker RM will remove a container, delete a container by name or ID. Okay, so that is probably created. Yeah, sure, why not? Let's go ahead and snatch that IP address out. And I'm going to add an Etsy hosts entry just to make it simple. Let's see. Let's call it docker.me. So now docker.me is my new Docker machine. And now I can SSH root at docker.me. And do that on a second tab as well over here. I might not need a second tab, but yeah, I'll do it. Okay, so we are logged into our Docker virtual machine, and you can see that I have the Docker command. Yep, there's all your Docker commands. Yep, a little bit daunting. So the first thing you want to do is Docker login. And Docker login will allow you to either create a new account or log in with existing credentials on Docker Hub. Now you can change this to point to quay.io or some other Docker repository, or maybe you have a private repository, but by default, it's going to be Docker Hub. I've already logged in, so I'm good to go. So there we go. Let's clear that out. So once you're logged in, you can now run containers, any public container that's been released. Just kind of like think of it as a GitHub repository. So I can go Docker run, and then there's a company called Tutum that has this Hello World. That's just basically a Hello World web app. Let's say this is my full-blown web application. I've built it and I've put it up to the Docker Hub repository. I can now run it on any machine. We will get into how to build this in the next tutorial, but I feel like it's a lot easier on Docker to learn by just running existing containers. So if I say Docker run, the first thing it's going to do is it's going to pull all the layers that it needs to run that. And kind of, this is one of the reasons I recommend using DigitalOcean, because this is pretty fast. They have a really great internet connection, or any VPS server for that matter. So all these layers are basically the changes that they've made on top of the files, on top of the Docker file system. So maybe this layer right here was installing Apache. Maybe this layer here was adding a few files to the file system. Maybe this layer was configuring the box a little bit. So my box is running right now. If I go over to my other window and I go Docker PS, you'll see that I've got a container that is running right now. It's got this ID. Let me zoom down a little bit because that seems kind of crunched up. Yeah. And now, of course, my screen's acting weird. Okay, here's my container ID. Here's the image that it's running from. That's the command that it ran. And you can see that it's exposing port 80. And then it's got a name of Tender Hawking. So let me go to docker.me port 80, and this will not work. Docker.me port 80 does not work. The reason that does not work is because it's exposing a port into the Docker daemon, but the Docker daemon is not exposing that port out to the rest of the world. And so if you want to expose a port, you actually have to run it differently. Let me go Docker. I can actually do like a Control C over here, Let me run that again. Docker run. And this time I'm going to give it a port to expose out to. Let's say 8080 is 80. So I'm going to map the container's port of 80 out to my server, my web server's port of 8080. So now I can access it. That's a great feature for Docker. And the reason they do this is, say you want to run 5 copies of your one web application. Well, that web application exposes, say, port 80 or port 3000. But we want to run that as 4 different ports because we want to run different copies of it. So it makes a lot of sense that you have that feature. So there we go. Let's run it again. And as you know from before, I hit run. So now I have 2 containers that I've created on my machine. So let's go docker me 8080. And there you go. Hello world. I'm now seeing my Docker web application. Let's go back here and you see that I'm seeing some logs, that everything's coming through. And now let me go ahead, Control C, and stop that. So if I go docker ps flag A, I've created 2 copies of this web server. So let me go ahead and let me just go ahead and delete both of these now. I'm going to copy this container ID, docker rm kill you, docker rm kill you. So now ps A. I have no containers created, no containers running. So let's say in a standard scenario, I'm going to run, say, 4 copies of my container, and I'm going to load balance between them. So I could do something like this, docker run. I'm going to give this one a name, web1, so I can refer to it by name. Port, you'll be 8081, coming from port 80 inside of tudum/hello world. I should just pronounce it differently every time I say it. So there we go. That one's going to run. And I'm also going to run you as a daemon. I'm going to do flag D, which runs it in the background. So you've noticed here I've got this run command with flag D, flag name, flag P. That's the most daunting thing about Docker to me when I was learning this a while back is lots of flags. It feels like, is there going to be an endless amount of flags here? Because honestly, most command line applications, you have 1 flag, maybe 2. Docker, you can have up to 4 or 5. And so if you in your mind just tell yourself, hey, going to be a lot of flags, I just got to deal with it, then you'll be fine after a couple days. There's only so many flags. So let's run the exact same thing. Web 2 is going to be port 8082. And web 3 is going to be port 8083, and we'll stop with 3 webs. So now if I go docker ps, I've got three web instances running, web 1, web 2, web 3. I can get to it port 8081, port 8082, port 8083. And you notice each one of these has a different host name, which is a Docker ID in this case. So that's kind of cool. Now I could add an Nginx instance that would load balance between these 3, and it would look to these different ports. I could do a lot of different cool things. I can also now start and stop them by name. So docker stop web 3, and now that's not going. If I go docker ps, I only have 2 running. If I go docker ps-a, I've got 3 in existence, but it exited a while ago. So now I can start web 3 again. Docker start web 3. So that's kind of the basics of Docker. And in the next video, let's